children took center stage at the Africa Children's Summit this week. The summit bringing together over 1,000 children from across the continent, and the focus was on children's rights, gender-based violence and inclusive representation for marginalised groups, coming at a time when South Africa is grappling with a spate of sexual violence cases against minors. We're now joined by Nelson Mandela Children's Fund CEO, Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, who has been, of course, part of this as well and speaks to us this evening. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Let's just first start with, of course, this is a platform that was seen as one that will ensure that children are heard and not just seen and dismissed. Let's speak about the work that lies ahead now and some of the conversations that would have taken place to ensure that it doesn't just remain a talk shop.
Good evening, Monga, to you and the viewers. Let me start by sharing with you the closing sentence in the outcome statement that the children prepared yesterday. And this is a message to policymakers, to leaders, to caregivers. It says, together we can make a change. We are the future. We want to learn, grow, and help our countries. We ask our leaders to listen, take action, and work with us to make these dreams come true for every child, everywhere in Africa. So that was the closing message from the children to all of us, that they've got dreams and they want every child in Africa to have a fighting chance of those dreams being realized. And so where to from here? Where to from here is really where the work begins. And it begins with tomorrow, two of my colleagues and the chairperson of the Children's Committee that put together this initiative have traveled to Lesotho to present the outcome statement to the African Committee of Experts on the Welfare and Rights of the Child, so that this outcome statement can become a living document that the AU can disseminate among its member nations. And then back home, it's for us to start working closely together within the children's sector to make sure that the 10 outcomes that came out of this Children's Summit become actions that can be reported upon at the next Children's Summit in 2027.
And how are you hoping that this living document actually translates to action? And I ask this because you think about a country like ours of contrast and diversity. When one child, for example, is preparing to go to school in the morning, another child is already at a traffic light knocking on windows, begging for bread. And how then do we begin to ensure that this particular document that lives is one that can bridge such divides?
You know, one of the things that the Deputy Minister of Social Development said yesterday when he received the outcome statement from the children was that this outcome statement needs to start feeding into policy that becomes acts of bills that get taken to Parliament. And so we're going to be working together, like I said, with other organizations within the children's sector, importantly with the Department of Social Development, so that we can start to put together actionable, measurable plans towards realizing some of the initiatives that the children would want to see happen towards the outcomes. It's a long road, it's a swimming upstream, but I think we would have done the children an injustice if we gathered them for 3 days and then nothing changes. So the onus is now on us to make sure that we start implementing what they've asked to see as the Africa that they are the future of.
And while I have you, I just want us to take a step back as well to something that you and I have chatted about, which is the State of the South African Child Report, which really just painted a worrying picture on the plight of children in the country. And you were hoping that this galvanizes collective action, ignites meaningful conversations among others. Now, as you and I are talking, we're reporting on incidents of either bullying or a child that could have been impregnated potentially by an educator who has now in Limpopo. One has disappeared, another one, of course, still unclear as to whether or not this is indeed correct. And then you do have that 7-year-old in the Eastern Cape. These are some of the cases that are known, but there are other cases that go unreported. And I wonder for you, when you look back since that State of the Child Report to where we are now, have things moved in terms of the needle at all when the needs of the child are concerned?
We're moving backwards. We're definitely moving backwards, Bongiwe. And I think really we need to now start to move towards accountability. on the part of the office bearers who are supposed to make sure that certain of the things that have been implemented at policy level are actually implemented. So one of the things that the children talked about was that corporal punishment has been outlawed in a lot of countries, for example, but teachers are still willy-nilly inflicting violence on children. And there now needs to be more concrete action toward when a child has, when a teacher has a case of violence, what happens to ensure that they're not at the school, to ensure that they don't have proximity to children, and what happens in their next life of teaching. So those are the things that children have got no control over. It becomes for us to now start doing the monitoring and the evaluation of the extent of implementation of some of the decisions that have been taken and should actually be the lived experiences of children.
And as you say, the conversations and the real work starts now. Let's see then what happens. And as a channel this week, really focusing hugely on this particular subject. Thank you so much for talking to us this evening. And let's chat, of course, as the work continues for you there. That was Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, CEO of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund.